Have you enjoyed watching college football for the past 2 nights? We haven't had any just unbelievable games like we will have throughout the rest of the season. So think back to last season, the season before, for as long as you've been watching college football, what do we think about as we recap and review the day, especially on a Saturday when just about everybody's playing? Wow. That was a crazy game. Look at what happened there. That was shocking. Look at that comeback. Just almost no weekend in college football is there a disappointment in regards to drama, outcomes, results, spectacular plays, all of that. We really haven't had that on Thursday and Friday night. We've had a limited number of teams that have played. Most of the best teams are still waiting for Saturday, Sunday, and Monday to play. But it's just been nice to watch college football and see the athletes back on the field, the competition on the field. That said, we haven't had a ton of 50-0 games. There have been some competitive games. And we saw 2 of the top 15 teams in the nation tonight pushed in the second half in Michigan State and Stanford. So it's been great to watch college football. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, breaking down the game we love with your help, with instant analysis last night of all the Thursday games and tonight earlier with Michigan State and Utah State at halftime and Sparty struggling to take a lead at halftime at 20-14. We struck up the live stream to talk Michigan State in particular. Syracuse struggling at that point with Western Michigan. Duke all over Army at 17-0. They went on and won comfortably as well, but more drama in the Michigan State-Utah State game. And just wrapping up, Stanford getting its revenge on San Diego State. The Aztecs had beaten the Cardinal at home behind Rashad Penny last year. And Stanford, despite a sloppy, struggling first half into the third quarter, gets it done and proves to be the much better team in the second half over San Diego State, a really, really solid football program under Rocky Long and a good, hard-nosed football team that's going to make a statement and going to be a factor once again in the Mountain West Conference with the second best record, as we saw on the broadcast tonight, the second best record in the Mountain West to Boise State going back to 2013 at 47-20. So count on San Diego State, especially based on what we saw tonight, to be a factor in the Mountain West Conference, but not dynamic enough, not strong enough, ultimately along the defensive and offensive fronts, although they played much better and dominated the line of scrimmage in the first half. In the long run, not good enough to hang with Stanford 31-10, but it was a competitive game. And Stanford, J.J. Arcega-Whiteside making some tremendous plays to offset an off night by Bryce Love. I don't want to necessarily call it a lack of performance by him. He just didn't have a chance. They obviously sold out on the run, sold out on Bryce Love, and they made an impact, and they accomplished goal number 1 in holding Bryce Love to 29 yards on 18 carries. So Bryce Love did not get off to a Heisman start. And he did not suffer this kind of game last year in racking up over 2,000 yards rushing. I believe the final figure was 21-18, including the bowl game. 21-18 last year, I believe, was the statistic for Bryce Love in rushing. So he has a bit of a hole to dig out of because he only had 1 or 2 games under 100 yards last year, and those were in the 80-90 range. So Bryce Love does not get off to a good start on his Heisman campaign his senior season. Stanford does win, more importantly, 31-10, and there's more to talk about with the Cardinal and the Aztecs. Also, as we mentioned, Michigan State, Utah State, we joined you at halftime with Sparty struggling. They were down 7-0. They were down also at 13-7. They had just scored a touchdown to go up 20-14 behind Brian Lewerke. They did not put away the Aggies. They led by 2 touchdowns in the third quarter. Utah State continued to come back. They forced a couple turnovers. Brian Lewerke was careless with the football a couple times, made some stupid mistakes in thinking that he was showing fumble or showing incomplete pass left-handed, and that caused a fumble. There were some other plays in the Michigan State-Utah State game, and not necessarily just singular plays, but areas of the offensive and defensive sides for Michigan State that should cause Spartan fans to be concerned and Mark D'Antonio to go back to the drawing board. Although we did lay out the history under D'Antonio at Michigan State in struggling against Group of Five and in particular MAC teams at home in the openers and second games of the season, in seasons in which Michigan State has proven to be one of the 5 or 10 best teams in the country and won Rose Bowls and Cotton Bowls and finished in the college football playoffs and been lackluster, sluggish, and struggling out of the gate, barely beating MAC teams by a touchdown or so. So this has happened repeatedly. I don't think it's anything to be overly concerned about if you're Michigan State. They have a tougher foe next week in Arizona State on the road. I'm more concerned about that game for Michigan State being on the road on the West Coast where Big Ten teams historically struggle, through the years, and many of those times it's because the Big Ten has been inferior to the Pac-12. That is not the case now, nor has it been the case for the past few years. So Michigan State goes to Arizona State in what could be an intriguing game against Herm Edwards and company. All right, Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Please like, comment, and subscribe. I need you to do that because it drives the YouTube search engine. And we're building something here with your help. And for me to deliver the content at the basis that I do on a regular basis and the quality content, and to bring on the broadcasters, bloggers, and writers that I do on a regular basis, I need your help. And so YouTube takes account of likes and dislikes. If you totally hate what I have to say, at least dislike it. At least show some engagement. I will take the dislike over the like or over the non-engagement or the apathy. We'll take the dislike. But if you enjoy the content, whether you agree with me on a regular basis or not, if you take in the content, please give me the like, give me the comment, especially on the prediction videos, which are going to be outdated here in about 24 hours. But on the prediction videos, in which I've got some Michigan notes here, I should probably crank out a Michigan video in addition to my predictions for Saturday, because I'm off to a good start and I'm feeling good on my predictions. Now let's get to the live chat before we run down the rest of my notes and my thoughts on Stanford, in particular against San Diego State, and also the Michigan State against Utah State 38-31 Spartans win. Tomorrow, we will see you live at 10 o'clock in the morning Eastern Time. At 10 o'clock in the morning Eastern Time, or roughly at about 9:45, I may be regretting adding that to the live stream schedule and committing myself to 10 o'clock in the morning on Saturday. I might be regretting that. I'm going to be bleary-eyed at 9:45, I guarantee it, but we'll take a shower, we'll get fired up, we'll get ready to go, and you guys will carry me through an hour and a half to 2 hours as we lead up to the noon kickoffs in some very intriguing games at noon. Oklahoma, Florida Atlantic, Maryland, Texas, and a few others will catch my eye. Let's see what you guys have. I need to set this up about here so I can focus my attention straightforward while I address the live chat at the same time. We'll put that on the to-do list with everything else. All right, boys, what do you got tonight? And I shouldn't say it like that because I noticed that in receiving emails for the newsletter that we have some young ladies, or maybe not so young ladies, I don't know, but some of the fairer sex that have joined the newsletter as well and that watch Mark Rogers TV. About 4% of the audience, females. So, for what it's worth. All right, LSU Fan 101. It's back. It's freaking back. It's LSU in Miami, but you've got to make it through Saturday, so enjoy the football. Don't freak out. Don't get too anxious, nervous, overhyped, just taking the football tomorrow, because It's going to be great tomorrow. And then you can get nervous about Miami on Sunday night. Gators 28, Georgia 27. I need to recheck the schedule. I didn't know that we've got Florida, Georgia tomorrow. Booyah! Colton, good to see you as always. LSU fan 101. There's no way Michigan State should move up. If anything, they should be bumped down to like 17. That's embarrassing to struggle against Utah State. Okay, this gives me a good opening to introduce how I approach the top 25. I did not release a preseason top 25. I enjoy the top 25, and what I did last season was when the top 25 was released on Sunday, I immediately looked it over. I took account of the inconsistencies and the illogic. For example, this is case example, that if Michigan State beat Michigan head-to-head and they were both 7-1, that Michigan was still ranked ahead of Michigan State. That doesn't make any sense. That's unfair. That shouldn't happen. Unless Michigan State beat Michigan, but Michigan beat Penn State and Penn State beat Michigan State. And so then you've got a three-way deal, and then you rely on the track record on the complete resume. It gets more complicated than that. The more games that are played, and you have more three-way situations to work through. But what I would do each and every Sunday last year is I would get the top 25 hot off the press, and I would find all the inaccuracies, inconsistencies, and illogic, and I would just tear it to shreds. And then I would deliver for you the top 25 that makes sense. I'm going to do that next week after the first games are played, and LSU Fan 101 and some others, I'm going to warn you that you're not going to agree with my top 25, but you have to understand the reasoning. Okay, let's say Maryland beats Texas, just like they did last year. Maryland, game one, goes to Austin, beats Texas. Now, of course, we have to conjecture how good teams are after one game. So if Maryland beats Texas, we could say Maryland just beat a really good Texas team that's probably one of the top 20 teams in the nation. Or we could come to the conclusion Texas must not be very good. They just lost to Maryland. I think we can both all reasonably say that Texas is a good football team. Are they top 5 good? Probably not. Are they top 10 good? Probably not. 15, 20, 25, something in that range. Most likely, I think most college football fans, until Texas proves that there's something besides that, until they start the season 2-4 or start the season 7-0 and beat Oklahoma and some other teams and show us that they're better than that, I think we have a reasonable idea of what Texas is. And this holds true for other teams across the country. My point being that when Maryland beat Texas last year, and that was the only game on each team's resume, I ranked Maryland like 16th in the country, and people just blasted me. Maryland's not the 16th best team in the country. What are you doing? You're an idiot. And I got the idiot term thrown at my face all over the place because they didn't listen. They didn't watch the video. They didn't listen to what was coming out of my mouth, which was, I am going strictly by resume. I didn't believe at that point that Maryland was the 16th best team in the country. And I clearly stated, Maryland, in my opinion, is not anywhere close to the 16th best team in the country. And most likely that's going to be proven out. And when it's proven out, they will drop out and be history. But for right now, they play Texas on the road and they put up 51 points. And I'm ranking them 16th in the country because that, based on one game, everybody playing one game, that's where they should be ranked, or something in that range. I didn't say it was the perfect ranking. They could have been placed 8th, they could have been 22nd, but they should have been ranked based on the win that they had. I had Maryland after one game ranked ahead of Ohio State because Ohio State played nobody in week 1. I don't remember who it was. Maybe it was Bowling Green, 77-10. So, of course, Ohio State's better than Maryland. And if you were asking me who are the top 25 teams in the country ranked in order based on my opinion, then I would give that to you. But that's more a projection of the end of the season than it is, this is what they've done to date. And to date, Maryland, this is just one example. Maryland beat Texas, a good team, a projected good team on the road, and scored 51 points, and that's where I ranked them. I did not expect or anticipate them to be there. I did not believe them to be the 16th best team in the country. If they would have held serve, if they would have shown me and everyone else to be wrong and continue to win, then they would have moved up or maintained that ranking based on being 5-1 or 7-2 or whatever. But they didn't, and as soon as they lost and showed themselves to be the 75th or 80th best team in the country, they quickly dropped out of my top 25. Simple. So, for example, give me a team that's decent that has a tough game tomorrow. Northwestern beat Purdue on the road. It was not an overly impressive showing. It was a good showing. They won the game. They were helped out at the end of the game, but they did not have the services of Clayton Thorson fully healthy for every snap of the game, and still won the game on the road against what we expect to be a decent Purdue team that's going to win 5 to 7 games. A decent team, a top 50 to 75 team. If Ohio State goes out and beats Oregon State, as they will, whether that's, so I'm going to be harsher on Ohio State if they go out and win 27-20, rather than if they win as expected 50-7. But who has the better win? So the resume after this weekend's play is going to be that Northwestern beat Purdue on the road, Ohio State beat Oregon State at home. I'm going to have, I'll tell you this right now, I'm going to have Northwestern ranked ahead of Ohio State. Not that I believe that they're better than Ohio State, but for 1 week, they have a better resume than Ohio State. That's how I'm going to rank the teams. I'm telling you this right now. So for the first 3 or 4 weeks of the season, you're going to think I'm crazy. All right. Hopefully somebody out there understands that. Michigan State wins in the Michigan State fashion. Noah. Colton, Stanford looks like Stanford. George, I hope Bobby Durkins and Uncle Lou call in. Oh, man, I got to get the call-in deal. I'm not going to be able to get that for tomorrow, but I'm going to desperately need that for the 90-minute to 2-hour show on Saturday morning so you guys can keep me awake. Call in. I thought I had that taken care of, but I need to jump on that. The newsletter. I already have tons of notes for the newsletter. It's going to be phenomenal. I hope you guys aren't disappointed by the newsletter, but if you are, you know what you're going to do? You're going to tell me how it can be better. Give me some suggestions. Jordan Love picked apart that so-called elite Michigan State defense. Jamie, after watching Stanford and Utah, Oregon will win the Pac. Okay, Jamie. Jamie, we know you love Oregon, so you're biased, and that's fine. You're a fan. We're all biased. I explained that last night, that even myself, who's trying to be neutral, is biased. That's inherent. But you should know better, especially out of that conference where the likes of Washington State has lost to FCS teams in the past and turned out to be upper division Pac-12 caliber, that you cannot, let's not overreact to one game. I just gave you, during the Michigan State-Utah State analysis a few hours ago, gave you the litany of games that Michigan State has struggled against the likes of Central Michigan and South Florida when they went 2-10, and all sorts of bad and marginal teams from the group of 5, and then turned around and won the Rose Bowl or won the Cotton Bowl or went to the college football playoff or finished with a really good season, top 10 in the nation. Let's not overreact to one game, especially if it's a win. Now, if Michigan State would have lost to Utah State, I would say, wow, that really hurts. But I would still caution that Michigan State's still going to be tough to beat and going to be a factor in the Big Ten. Let's not overreact to one game, especially when it's a win, especially when it's a track record just building on a resume that Michigan State has shown us for years under Mark D'Antonio that they do not win impressively against bad teams, especially out of conference early in the season. George, LSU, we bet against you, signed Gator Nation. Air Max, the legend killer. San Diego State's defense was ready for Bryce Love. Yes, they were. They stacked the box. They were all over him. 18 carries for 29 yards. And even Cameron Scarlett, the backup, who's a good player, he had a bad night as well. They really just didn't run the ball. And we'll get to that in just a second. Jamie, you're smoking. We blew Cal out last year. That was last year, Jamie. Yes. Many teams follow suit and continue whatever they are. They are what they are. They are the same this year as last year, but a lot changes year to year. We can go blowouts one year and then the other team wins the next year. I get your point that you blew Cal out last year, but you should know, Jamie, from watching a lot of college football, that results change year to year quickly. Colton forgot about Fresno. Fresno is located in California, Colton. Do not forget about Fresno. Jawan Johnson is another San Diego State running back beast. Jawan Washington, Air Max. It's Jawan Washington. He certainly was. His first 12 carries of the game, he had about 100 yards. He ripped them off pretty quickly. First couple drives of the game, he was a beast, both from a power perspective and a speed and quickness perspective in the hole. Numerous times a safety or linebacker for Stanford came up in the hole and he juked him. Or he threw him a hip or a thigh and just knocked him down. He was impressive. Very impressive. Bryce Love, again, 18 carries for 29 yards. Statistically, that's going to hurt him in the Heisman race. He needs big games against Washington, Oregon, USC in particular, and Notre Dame late in the season. Or Notre Dame, the Notre Dame-Stanford games in September, actually. All right, all right, all right. San Diego State is slowly turning into running back U. Okay, let's calm down on that. We've got this kid. We have Rashad Penny. We had Donnell Pumphrey before that. And we have Marshall Faulk from way, way back. And if you guys can remind me of anybody else who's been relevant from San Diego State, I'm not saying that there haven't been since the early 90s, but they're not coming to mind before Pumphrey recently and then Penny and now Washington. We can go to a zillion other schools in college football that have produced better running backs than San Diego State. So it's not running back U. Maybe it's the running back U of the group of five. Maybe. Maybe. Colton, Wilcox a better coach than Cristobal. I cannot argue with that. Bowers is better than Herbert. I can argue with that. Justin Herbert's a better quarterback than Ross Bowers. He is a better pro prospect. That doesn't necessarily mean that he's going to show it in college, but to date, he has shown it. What I noticed from checking out Herbert's highlights from last year and the one game that I watched start to finish was the Nebraska game, and I also watched the bowl game against Boise State, is that unfortunately at the point that Herbert got hurt last year, he didn't face the best defenses on the schedule for Oregon. He missed Washington. He missed Stanford. He missed somebody else really good from the Pac-12 South Division. So I want to see him play against the best defenses on that schedule. Unfortunately, Oregon did not schedule anybody in the non-conference, and I know Jamie and others are going to mention to me that Texas A&M backed out of a game that was signed to be played back in 2014 for this season. So Oregon, I understand that you had the game against Texas A&M, but they're not playing anybody in the non-conference. So I want to see Justin Herbert against the Washington defense in particular, also against Stanford and USC and Utah, those four games in particular. We've got a big Cal-Oregon comparison going here between Colton and somebody else. Yeah, Laird is better than Brooks James. We'll see. Laird was counted upon to be better than Brooks James. Of course, Ross Freeman, yes, was the running back that gained 1,000 yards every year that he was at Oregon, 64 touchdowns in his career. So, yeah, Brooks James is taking over as the primary back where Laird already was and gained 1,100 yards last year. I'd have to compare the guys and watch them side by side for a full game or two to make that kind of comparison in terms of who's actually better. TCU is the Wisconsin of the Big 12. Air Max, I get your point. Colton's not sure about USC. Jamie, we have talent. It wasn't developed. Cristobal is being SEC staff West. Ricky on the line. I'm nervous about tomorrow. I might not sleep tonight. And Ricky, based on Iowa's performance against FCS and Group of 5 teams, especially from the MAC under Kirk Ferentz, I understand your anxiety. I would be not surprised if Northern Illinois gave Iowa a really good game. I don't know what the point spread is, but if it's anything more than 12 or 13 points, I'll take Northern Illinois. And I guess I'm going to see that in a few minutes because after I get off here, I got to deliver my predictions, which I said I'm going to get out every Wednesday. But you can wait for them, especially if I'm going to continue a 4-1 pace. 4-1 against the spread thus far, Thursday and Friday. So I'm going to brag this up a little bit because it's not going to last at 80%, obviously. So I took Central Florida to cover 23.5 against UConn. They won by 39. I took Northwestern plus the 2 against Purdue. Of course, they won by 4. I took Michigan State to cover 23.5. They did not. That was my loss. I took Western Kentucky plus the 36.5. Please tell me that Wisconsin did not tack on a late touchdown. I believe that Wisconsin won by 31, so I got that one right. And I took Stanford to cover 14, and they won by 21. 4-1, 5-0 straight up thus far. Of course, I get put to the test tomorrow with the likes of Michigan, Notre Dame, Auburn, Washington, etc. All right. What else we got on here? Cal 8-4. Arizona, Stanford, Washington, USC are their losses. Cal's going to lose to Stanford, Washington, USC, and Arizona and go 8-4. I've got Cal at 6-6, 3-6 in the Pac-12. Colton, as you well know, I think he responded to that. So I was a 10-point favorite, according to Ricky, at home against Northern Illinois. I would take the Hawkeyes to cover. I would not feel extremely good about that. But when you think about 10 points, look at the Stanford game against San Diego State tonight. San Diego State dominated that game up front. Both offensive and defensive lines dominated Stanford for most of the first half. But there were a couple plays in the game that turned Stanford's way, and then Stanford being the much better team, just like Iowa is versus NIU, the much better team, meaning a top 25 to 30 team taking on a top 70 or 80 team at home. So over the course of 60 football minutes, 3.5 hours, Iowa may lead at halftime 13-10. And then 20-10, then 20-13, and then 23-13, and then 30-13. Most likely, Ricky, I'm not saying that this is a guarantee or any kind of lock, but if somebody holds a gun to my head and says, is Iowa going to cover 10 points against Northern Illinois? I would say 8 out of 10 times, yes. There are going to be a couple of those games out of 10 times that Iowa's just going to go out there and beat them down 37-7 or 42-10. And then there's going to be the 1 or 2 times that Northern Illinois might actually pull off one upset in 10 tries against Iowa, or maybe another time that they would lose on a last-second field goal. Then the other 6 or 7 games, most of the time, I was going to slowly pull away and win 30-14, 31-14, 33-16, 27-12, something like that. So if you want to score, Ricky, and I know you haven't asked for one, I say Iowa beats Northern Illinois. I'll go 31-14. LSU is my Cinderella team after they shake off the Miami loss. Jamie, we will win one in the next 5 years. Jamie, is that a national championship? We will earn our first national championship in the next 5 years. Jamie, the odds are way against you. I hope you're right. I would start with a Pac-12 championship. But, hey, this is why I've got you guys on here to give it to us. You're right, athletic dasshole. NIU ain't no joke. They have had a good run. NIU against Power 5, quality Power 5 opponents. And NIU has a ridiculous schedule this year. If you checked it out, they play Iowa, Utah, and Florida State. That's crazy. Maybe Alabama should play their schedule. And you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to post the argument that Mike Laval and I had on our SEC preview special about Alabama's schedule, because he got me a bit worked up about that. Let's see how NIU has faced and fared against the Power 5. Northern Illinois in 2017 lost to Boston College on a last-second field goal, 23-20. Case in point. They beat Nebraska 21-17. They lost to Duke in the bowl game 36-15. In 2016, Northern Illinois did not play any Power 5 games that year. They did lose to South Florida 48-17 non-conference and San Diego State 42-28, but that was one of the worst recent Northern Illinois teams you're going to see at 5-7. In 2015, Northern Illinois, I was at this game. They scared #1 Ohio State to death, and it took Darren Lee pick 6 to break that game open at like 20-6. But Ohio State, maybe the most talented team in the country and the #1 team at the time in the 3rd week of the season, beat Northern Illinois 20-13. Northern Illinois only lost to Boston College that year, 17-14. And they got annihilated by Boise State in the Poinsettia Bowl, 55-7. All right, case in point, 2014. Northern Illinois beat Northwestern 23-15. They lost to Arkansas 52-14. Northern Illinois in 2013. There's your Iowa game. They beat Iowa in 2013. I remember this game. A decent Iowa team that went the customary Hawkeye 8-5. Northern Illinois beat them 30-27. They also beat Purdue that year 55-24. And of course, Purdue was awful, but they're still a Big Ten team, and Northern Illinois killed them. I'll only go back a few more years. But in 2012, Iowa was good. No, they were not good that year. They went 4-8. That was their one down year. Yeah. But Northern Illinois only lost to Iowa 18-17. They beat Kansas 30-23. If we can count Kansas as a Power 5. That was the year that Jordan Lynch took them to the Orange Bowl, and they lost to Florida State 31-10. 2011, Northern Illinois lost to Wisconsin 49-7. And the year before, they lost to Iowa State 27-10. They lost to Illinois 28-22. They beat Minnesota 34-23. So Northern Illinois, to Ricky's point, plays well, and to somebody else's point and my point, they have played the Power 5 extremely tough historically. I'm going to go through my San Diego State to Stanford notes, just because I take these notes for a reason. It's to do these instant analysis, and I used to do these a little bit different, where I would either do solo instant analysis after the games, if you guys were around last season or the season before, and I didn't have a live chat. There was no live chat at that point. Maybe there was a live chat if you had a special YouTube channel, but there was no live chat, so I just knocked it out, and that was that. But now I interact with you guys. So I take my notes and I deliver my instant analysis in the past, and that was that. But now that I've got you guys, I tend to ignore my notes, but I took them for a reason. So yeah, Juwan Washington came out at the gate. He was spectacular. And this is a kid that, in backing up Rashad Penny, was capable. The last 2 years, he ran for over 1,200 yards and 13 touchdowns in 2016 and 17 combined in relief of Rashad Penny. So it's not like this is his first collegiate action. He is shown to be capable in the past. San Diego State, as I mentioned a number of times throughout the first half, dominated both lines of scrimmage. Bobby Okereke for Stanford made the second most important play of the game, at least in the first half. Second most important play of the first half for Stanford. They were down 7-0. He was shot out of a cannon, tackled the quarterback in the end zone for a safety, 7-2. That was set up by the Stanford punter, who is Jake Bailey, one of the best in the nation, kicking a ball out, just boomed a punt, knocked it out at the 1-yard line. So that's what a good punter will do for a defense. And even for a bad defense, at least the offense has to drive the length of the field. Bryce Love, again, 10 carries, 7 yards at that point, 18 carries for 29 yards. He had a 14-yard run. So for the other 17 Bryce Love carries, he had 15 yards. This game belonged to the Stanford defense in the second half, and J.J. Arcega-Whiteside. He had a great back shoulder catch for the first Stanford touchdown to make it 9-7. And then what I thought was the play of the game here. So the game at this point was 7-2, and Andrew Alecki, the linebacker, batted up a pass from KJ Costello, and Noble Hall picked it off. Big lineman, number 95, good hands, picked the pass off, and he was in the clear. Now, he wasn't going to score, but San Diego State was already up 5, and they were going to have the ball deep in Stanford territory, and Trenton Irwin made the Maurice Claret play of the day, saving Stanford right there. Stripped, forced the fumble, recovered it, and that gives Stanford the ball, and because of the change of possessions, they get the first down, and they get to start the drive over. That led to an Arcega-Whiteside touchdown, in which Costello really showed his arm talent on this particular play. He had to move around the pocket, and he kind of slung it sidearm, and he threw a perfect pass on the money to Arcega-Whiteside, who made a nice hands catch and showed his length. And Stanford was up 9-7. And then there were a couple pass interference calls on Stanford's next series that they benefited from. San Diego State blew a coverage. Arcega-Whiteside was wide open, caught the touchdown. It was 16-7. Finally, San Diego State opened things up. And the reason they did was Stanford finally stopped Juwan Washington. So San Diego State moved it down the field, but Stanford stood up in the red zone. It was 16-10 after the field goal. And then after that, Stanford opened it up and just proved to be the better team. J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, I got to check out his final stats because he had an 80-yard touchdown and then a beautiful basketball-type box out on the two-point conversion to catch it and knock out the defender and shade him out 24-10. And there you go. Kobe Parkinson, another lengthy, actually positionally, he's a tight end, catches the final touchdown for Stanford. They win 31-10 despite playing a lackluster first half. I want to see J.J. Arcega-Whiteside's final numbers in this game because they were mighty impressive. JJ Arcega-Whiteside, we talked a lot about him in the offseason when we talked Stanford football. He was by far their #1 guy coming back. 6 catches for 226 in the air and 3 touchdowns. Now, that is a game for a wide receiver. 6 receptions, 226 yards, helped out by the 80-yard play in which he made a great play and got a ton of yak yardage after it. 38 yards per catch, 3 touchdowns. What a great game. Maybe that's your Heisman front runner for Stanford right there through week 1. Now, see, if we were doing a top 25 poll, team poll, player poll like I do the team poll, Bryce Love is a better Heisman candidate for the season, and we all know that, than JJ Arcega-Whiteside. But for one game, Bryce Love had 18 carries for 29 yards. Arcega-Whiteside had 6 catches for 226 and 3 touchdowns. He would be higher in the Heisman poll right now. Makes sense? That's how I rank the top 25 teams in the nation. Now, when Bryce Love starts racking up 180 and 200-yard rushing games, and JJ Arcega-Whiteside starts turning in 3-catch games for 52 yards, then it goes back the other way. So tomorrow at 10 o'clock in the morning, if you guys are going to be up in Adam, I will be. I have committed myself to 10 a.m. and we'll see how many people jump on the live stream at 10 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday. Especially in the West Coast, it's going to be 7 in the morning. I don't know that anybody watches me from the West Coast on a regular basis. But yeah, it's going to be 7 o'clock in the morning on the left coast. But we'll run down my Big Ten predictions that will lead directly into a recap of my Pac-12, Big 12, SEC, and ACC predictions. And I will give you my college football playoff predictions that should have been out, yes, before Thursday, before the first game. My apologies. My off-season schedule will be meticulously scheduled to a hilt next season. And I will not box myself into a place where I've got to knock out like 57 videos in 3 days. So tomorrow, during the big 90-minute to 2-hour live stream leading into the noon Eastern time games, Big Ten predictions, then a recap of the Pac-12, Big 12, ACC, and SEC, which will lead us into a college football playoff picture that might be a little muddled, a little muddied, and I will have to interpret what the College Football Playoff Selection Committee will do or would do in that situation, that scenario in mind, or what I would do, which would be include all the conference champions. And we'll have some fun with that. Also, of course, we'll recap what we saw on Thursday and Friday with Northwestern Purdue, Minnesota, New Mexico State, Wake, and Tulane, Texas A&M, and Travion Williams running wild, Michigan State, Utah State tonight, Wisconsin, Western Kentucky, Stanford, San Diego State. But mostly we're going to preview the big Saturday games, Auburn, Washington, Alabama, Louisville, Michigan, Notre Dame, and everybody else. FAU with an intriguing challenge going to Oklahoma to take on the Sooners. And the Sooners are the one with the challenge that they did not anticipate when they scheduled this game before they knew who Devin Singletary and Lane Kiffin were. Well, they knew who Lane Kiffin was at the time, but he probably wasn't coaching at FAU at the time that this game was scheduled. That should be mighty intriguing. Maryland trying to upset Texas for a second consecutive year. Ohio State without Urban Meyer on the sideline taking on Oregon State. All right, folks, it's been fun. Michigan State slips by Utah State 38-31. Stanford dominates the second half, led by JJ Arcega-Whiteside, the leading Heisman Trophy candidate right now with 6 catches for 226 yards and 3 touchdowns. And Stanford pulls away from San Diego State 31-10. Wisconsin dominates Western Kentucky 34-3. And Duke beats Army as the Blue Devils start 1-0 behind Daniel Jones Brittane Brown, TJ Rahming, and company. All right. I will be back at 10 o'clock in the morning on Saturday. I'm going to deliver my college football predictions for Saturday. I hope to stay hot. I'm 4-1 against the spread. I've picked all 5 games correctly through Thursday and Friday. We will see you soon in just about 8.5 hours. Thanks so much for joining Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football.